Hi, I'm Jon San Paolo here in Studio A of Electrical Audio, and today I'd like to give you a couple of ideas for how to use a passive DI. So quickly I want to tell you the differences between an active and a passive DI. In the case of an active DI, we have an instrument level signal that goes through either a vacuum tube or a transistor on its way out to a mic level output. You need phantom power in order for this to work for a transistor-based, and some sort of external power for a tube-based. And the signal will only flow in one direction. On the other hand, with the passive DI, we use a transformer as the mechanism to convert a high impedance instrument level signal into a low impedance mic level signal. Because it's a transformer, we don't need to apply any sort of external power to it, and by nature of it being a transformer, the signal can actually flow in either direction, which is very, very helpful for us in the studio. More on that in a minute. So the most typical setup is what we have right here, where we want to grab literally the direct signal of any given instrument: guitar, bass, drum machine, synthesizer. Pretty much every DI is going to have either a pad or a line instrument toggle, so just make sure it's set in the right spot. And they're either going to have a parallel or a through jack, so just make sure that's connected correctly. Right now we've got the bass guitar going into the DI, across the transformer, and into the control room. And I also want to grab the amplified signal, so I'm going to plug it in, and now we have everything. Hey, reamping. This is when you have a line level recording of a direct signal that you'd like to re-record through an amplifier at instrument level. Essentially, we're running the signal here in reverse. There are several purpose-built boxes made for reamping, but you can also accomplish this with a passive DI. So here we have a bass guitar loop going through the computer, into the console through the fader, and from the direct out of the console into one of the microphone tie lines in center field. And the idea of having that fader is so that we send it out at a signal that's not too quiet that it's making the amp hissier than it needs to be, but not too loud so that we're not overloading the amplifier as we go. If you don't want to use an analog console, or if you don't have one and you just want to use the DAW's output faders, you can do that. So here's the signal right here coming into this microphone tie line. It goes along the cable into the direct box, transforming it from a line level low impedance source to an instrument level high impedance source that we can now feed into the amplifier and record as if it were a live instrument. Say you have a musician who would rather be in the control room with you while he's tracking.
Yeah, this tone just kind of sucks.
A guitar output or other unbalanced signal is subject to signal degradation and runs longer than about 20 feet. Not long enough to make it 2 or 3 rooms away where your amp is. A balanced, low impedance signal, on the other hand, can be run up to hundreds of yards before you'd encounter that risk. The low impedance and balancing of a signal, like a mic level signal, is what preserves the signal quality over a long run. So if we take our high impedance instrument level signal here, we'll be able to convert it to a low impedance balanced signal, meaning that we can maintain that signal integrity. But we're going to have to convert it back at the end of the line, so we're going to hook up another DI here. Because we're using identical DIs, we're doing essentially the reverse of what happened in the control room. So this signal is now being converted back to a high impedance instrument level signal, and therefore the amp sees a high impedance instrument level signal. You can also use a series of DI boxes as a means of getting an effects loop in place for vocals. The first DI converts the mic level signal to instrument level and high impedance, which the pedals expect to see. The signal goes through the pedal chain, then back into the second DI to convert it back to low impedance balanced mic level. Because transformers block DC and thus can't transmit phantom power, you'll need to use the output of the mic preamp if you're going to use a condenser mic or an active ribbon mic. Otherwise, you can go straight into the DI. Here we have a 15-inch speaker cabinet We really like to use this when recording drums because it does such a great job of picking up the really low frequencies on a bass drum. I'll show you how. So what we do is we butt the two of these together, and anytime the bass drum is struck, the speaker will vibrate sympathetically along with it. So we want to take that small electronic signal that it produces and send it to the DI. Once it goes through the DI, it'll go through into the control room, and then we can treat it like any other microphone we have on the drum kit. Here are some recordings with and without the bass cabinet in the mix.